Okay, hello again, everyone. So, last time we were discussing Plato's Apology, and we found out that Socrates thinks the good life is a life in which we take care of our soul or our character, and we take care of our soul or character by gaining knowledge or wisdom about the virtues. Because the idea is once you know how to act correctly, once you know how to act virtuously, you'll do so, and you'll live a good life. But there's a big problem here that we haven't gotten an answer to, right? How does just gaining knowledge regarding the virtues actually help you become virtuous at all? Right? We seem to have plenty of examples where people have knowledge about what's good or virtuous. They know what's right to do, but they still fail. They act contrary to what they know is right all the time, right? So priests who study morality, they get caught guilty of using drugs or committing sexual violence. Philosophers who study morality for a living don't always follow through on their own conclusions. There's been a handful of philosophers who were accused of sexual harassment or failing. I mean, there are some people who think philosophically that you should give all of your money to charity. But then when it comes down to it, well, they still live in a pretty nice home and drive a Prius instead of the cheapest car they could imagine, right? And so they're not even acting with their own moral conclusions. So it seems like Socrates has to be wrong here, right? How does this process really work? Maybe, as we saw in the Euthyphro, eliminating inconsistency in our belief, it can teach us how to be good, but that doesn't actually mean we'll act from that knowledge, right? That's the big issue we have now. We can know what is good or virtuous, but still fail to act that way. So just having knowledge wouldn't actually make you good. So we need to see how Socrates can respond to this, because Socrates thinks once you gain knowledge about the virtues, you will in fact act from that knowledge. Okay, and so we get our answer in the Protagoras. So in the Protagoras, we get what's known as Socratic intellectualism. And I'm going to give you a number of quotes right now, and I want you to read through them. And then after we're done reading through the quotes, I want you to pause and think about what Socrates might be trying to say here, right? Because he's giving you a solution to the problem I just raised. He does think knowledge will in fact lead to the correct action, but how can that be so? Okay. So Protagoras says, Simonides was not so uneducated as to say that he praised all who did nothing bad willingly, as if there were anyone who willingly did bad things. I'm pretty sure that none of the wise men thinks that any human being willingly makes a mistake or willingly does anything wrong or bad. They know very well that anyone who does anything wrong or bad does so involuntarily. Now, does the matter seem like that to you, or does it seem to you that knowledge is a fine thing capable of ruling a person? And if someone were to know what is good and bad, then he would not be forced by anything to act otherwise than knowledge dictates, and intelligence would be sufficient to save a person. For you agreed with us that those who make mistakes with regard to the choice of pleasure and pain, in other words, with regard to good and bad, do so because of a lack of knowledge, and not merely a lack of knowledge, but a lack of that knowledge which you agreed was measurement. Then if the pleasant is the good, no one who knows or believes there is something else better than what he is doing, something possible, will go on doing what he had been doing when he could be doing what is better. To give in to oneself is nothing other than ignorance, and to control oneself is nothing other than wisdom. Now no one goes willingly toward the bad or what he believes to be bad. Neither is it in human nature, so it seems, to want to go toward what one believes to be bad instead of the good. Okay, that's a lot. Pause here and think about it. How, within these quotes, is Socrates giving you an answer to this problem? Okay, hopefully you paused. Let's see. Let's see if we can make sense of this. So roughly what all of these quotes are getting at is the following idea. if I believe X, some action, right? If I believe that some action is the best available option, in other words, if I believe that that option or that action is good, then I will form a desire to perform that action and not some other act, which is worse for me. And anytime I happen to choose an act that is worse or just bad, it's because I mistakenly thought it was best at the time. So, Socrates claims no one ever goes willingly towards the bad. When you do go towards something that's non-ideal or bad, it's because you were ignorant of the facts of the case, or you made a mistake in your reasoning, right? There was either some information you were missing or something that you processed mistakenly. But once you fix that, once you get that knowledge or you fix that mistake in your reasoning, you'll have a correct belief about what is good, and so you'll do that thing. So roughly what Socrates is saying here is this is how the human psychology works, right? You form a belief about what's best, right? You look at all the options in front of you, and you form a belief about what is best for you to do. And then you make up a plan of action to realize that belief, and then you desire those actions. Right, so this is important. Normally we think our beliefs and our desires are things that can be pulled apart from one another. Right? We can desire to smoke a cigarette even though we know or believe it's bad for us to smoke a cigarette. But if that's the case, if Socrates is right here, that can't be true, right? Our desires are generated by our beliefs. So if you believe that smoking is bad for you, and you truly believe that smoking is bad for you, you're not just saying it, right? You truly believe smoking is bad for you, you'll form a plan of action to avoid smoking or quit smoking, and so then you will formulate desires based on that belief you have. Yeah, so our desires are dependent on our belief. Right? But let's think about this, right? Can we think of counter examples, right? Can we think of scenarios where we believe it's wrong to do something, but we do it anyway, right? And so a classic example is people who smoke cigarettes, right? So let's think about two types of people who smoke cigarettes. There are people who smoke cigarettes and they have yet to suffer any consequences from their action. Right, and so they say, look, I want to quit. I know it's bad for me. I know I'm risking my health, but I can't. I desire cigarettes more than I desire quitting. So my desire runs contrary to my belief. What would Socrates have to say there? Well, he'd have to say that these people are failing to correctly measure pleasure and pain because it's probably just too spread across time, right? The pain that they are going to receive, if they do, it's still a chance, but it's a high risk, right? It's a high chance, high probability. They're going to experience pain in the future, but they're discounting that future pain because it's not real to them yet, right? They can't actually feel it, and so it's in the future, it doesn't seem as serious. Whereas the pleasure they get from smoking cigarettes day in and day out right now is very high. And so they're doing a bad job, right? They're not measuring things appropriately. They should measure that future pain with the same intensity they're measuring their present pleasure, but they're failing to do that. And so really what they believe, Socrates claims, isn't that smoking is bad for them. They have a belief that there's risks involved, but really they believe it's better for me right now to smoke cigarettes than it is to avoid smoking cigarettes. So what about a second case, right, where people smoke cigarettes and they've already suffered consequences, right? So there are people alive right now who smoked cigarettes. Their habit led them to either have a stroke, heart attack, limb loss, cancer scare, or an actual case of cancer they've recovered from. And yet they still continue to smoke after those bad consequences. All right, what's going on there, right? Clearly, they have a belief that it's bad for them. They've experienced that it's bad for them, yet they're still smoking anyway. Isn't this a clear counterexample to Socrates? Well, once again, it depends. It seems like Socrates has an explanation here, right? He'd have to say, these people are failing in their rational measurement of pleasure and pain. Maybe what's going on here is their addiction is causing them to mistakenly believe that smoking is still bringing them more pleasure than pain. So there's something irrational going on based on their addiction that's causing them to have a false belief that smoking is actually still in their interests. Right? But Socrates will have to claim that when the person in case 2 claims, I know smoking is bad, they're lying. They're just saying that. They don't truly believe it. If they truly believed it, then they would have a desire to stop smoking, and so they would stop smoking. Now, hopefully you see what's going on here, right? The smoking cases seem like counterexamples, but Socrates has a way of accounting for them, right? He would have to say these people, they're just saying that they know smoking is bad, right? Because that's what society knows. We know smoking is bad. So they claim it, but they don't actually believe it. And in fact, the fact that they're still smoking means they do believe that smoking is better for them right now than to quit smoking. And it's either because, as is the case with C1, they're discounting that future pain, or with C2, maybe the addiction is causing them to act irrationally. Okay, so let's keep thinking about these. Let's get away from the smoking example. All right, so classic case, I think everybody's experienced is some nighttime food binging, right? So we claim, okay, I'm not hungry. I don't need any more food. I've had plenty today. I'm full. I'm bored. And so I'm going to stuff my face with all the shredded cheese in the fridge right now. Right. So what's going on there? We claim we know all these facts. We can list them, right? As we're doing it. As we're walking to the fridge, we can say to ourselves, I'm not hungry. I already had all my calories for the day. I know I'm just about to eat out of boredom, and so you claim, so I believe it's bad for me to do this, but you still end up doing it anyway. Isn't this a counterexample? Right? Well, so Socrates, if he's going to make sense of this, has to say something like the following. Right? The pleasure I receive from eating this whole bag of shredded cheese while also distracting myself from boredom momentarily outweighs the pleasure I will get in the future from not having overeaten tonight. Right? So you're making a calculation. You're saying, I'm going to get pleasure now. I'm going to avoid the pain of boredom by eating this cheese. I'm going to get the pleasure of the taste of cheese. And this pleasure and avoidance of pain that I'm getting right now is better than the little bit of pleasure I'll get in the morning when I didn't gain any weight. Right? In other words, the effect or the consequence of overeating right now tonight is negligible. Right? I'm not going to jump 10 pounds overnight. Maybe I'll put on a pound, whatever. I can get rid of that and I'll avoid all of this boredom I'm feeling right now. Now, if you repeat this process over time, clearly it's going to lead to you being unhealthy and in pain, possible death, so on and so forth. So eventually, Socrates claims, as it starts affecting your health, you'll have to calculate things differently. But right now, since the consequences are negligible, right, you're just going with what seems to bring you the most pleasure overall. So you claim as you're walking to the fridge that you know all of these things about overeating and boredom, but really what's going on is you're just claiming that, right? You're saying it to yourself, but deep down what you're doing is calculating your pleasure, and you're going to act from that pleasure. So once again, the process here is you form a belief about what's best for you, right? To maximize my pleasure, I need to eat this cheese right now, and that will bring me more pleasure than maintaining my weight overnight. So then I form a plan of action. I walk to the fridge and grab the cheese and start devouring it. And so then I desire to bring that plan of action into the world. Okay. So that's roughly what's going on. So now it seems like we almost have the whole entire picture, right? So we can live a good life by gaining knowledge about the virtues because we'll know the appropriate way to act in a given circumstance. And since our beliefs inform our desires because of Socratic intellectualism, we'll only form a desire to do what follows from the virtues, and so we'll be good and live a good life. But there's still one remaining question. Can virtue be taught? And that we will answer in the last video for this week. Thank you.